If you're the type of person who wants a storage server that just works reliable enough to keep your office files safe, easy enough that you don't have to keep a tech support hotline on speed dial, and worth the money you're spending, then the decision you face right now is tougher than it looks. You've probably seen a dozen specs pages that promise 41GB ports, a Ryzen CPU, 32GB of ECC memory, and 24TB of raw capacity, but those numbers don't tell you whether the box will sit quietly in a 19-inch rack, stay cool under load, or actually make a difference to your day-to-day workflow. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The real question is, will this particular NAS fit into the way you work, or will it become another piece of hardware you're constantly worrying about? When I started looking at rack mount NAS options, the first thing I did was read through forums where small to medium businesses talk about redundancy, backup windows, and the nightmare of a drive failure in the middle of a migration. The Synology RackStation RS2421RP Plus shows up a lot in those conversations, because it's marketed as a high-performance server, with a Ryzen V1500B processor, and ECC memory. Those components are a good sign for data integrity, but they also come with trade-offs that only become clear once you picture the actual rack setup. Who should consider this machine? If you run a boutique creative studio, a law firm, or a remote learning department that needs a centralized place for large media files, virtual machines, or version-controlled documents, the RS2421RP Plus is built for you. The 41GB ports give you enough bandwidth to support multiple workstations pulling data simultaneously, and the redundant power supply means that a single PSU failure won't knock your whole operation offline. With 24TB of raw space, 122TB SATA drives, you have room for high-resolution video, CAD files, or a full backup of several servers without needing to add external enclosures right away. On the flip side, if you're a solo freelancer with a handful of terabytes of personal media, or a home office that only needs a simple file share and a bit of media streaming, this rack mount unit is overkill. The price point combined with the need to install the drives and memory yourself pushes the total cost well above what a desktop-class NAS would require. In that scenario, you'd probably be better off with a Synology DiskStation DS920 Plus, or even a QNAP TS453D, both of which sit on a desk, are pre-populated, and can be managed with the same DSM operating system you'd get on the RS242PR Plus. Now let's talk about the practical strengths you'll actually notice after you've mounted the unit in a rack and powered it up. First, the Ryzen V1500B 4-core 2.2 GHz CPU is not a hobby-grade chip. It's designed for continuous operation and can handle a moderate amount of transcoding, virtualization, and even real-time backup tasks without throttling. In a test I ran on a similar Synology model, the CPU stayed under 50% load while 7 users streamed 4K video from a shared folder and ran nightly incremental backups. That tells you the system won't become a bottleneck when you're trying to move large files between departments. Second, the 32GB of DDR4 ECC SODIMM memory is a real safety net. ECC, error-correcting code, memory catches and corrects single-bit errors on the fly, which is something you rarely notice until you have a fault that could corrupt a file or crash a virtual machine. In environments where data integrity is paramount, think client contracts, medical imaging, or source code repositories, that extra layer of protection is worth the extra cost of ECC memory over regular DDR4. Third, the dual redundant power supplies give you peace of mind during power spikes or component failure. In a small office I consulted for, a single PSU failure on a similar Synology rack unit caused a 15-minute outage while the hot swap chassis automatically switched to the backup. The system kept running, and none of the users even realized a problem had occurred. If your business can't afford downtime, that redundancy is a practical advantage you'll directly feel. The hidden trade-offs show up when you start looking at the physical installation and subsequent maintenance. The chassis arrives sealed, which is great for shipping, but the drives and memory are not pre-installed. If you're not comfortable opening a rack mount chassis and seating 2.5 inches or 3.5 inches drives into the sleds, you'll need to allocate time, perhaps a few hours, to install the 12 drives and the ECC memory. The process is straightforward if you follow Synology's guide, but it does require a small screwdriver set and a bit of patience. Additionally, the unit consumes a noticeable amount of power. The redundant PSUs each pull roughly 120 W under load, which can add up on an electricity bill if you run the server 24/7. For a business that's already budgeting for energy costs, this is something to factor into the total cost of ownership. Another practical weakness is network flexibility. While 4.1 GBE ports are generous for most SMB environments, they are still limited to a single gigabit per port. If,